It's Saturday. I am coming to you from my car, but today Dr. Jennifer Edwards and I are really excited to bring you episode 7 of our Kick-Ass Leadership series. And today we're actually going to do part 3 of our 4-part mini series on energy blocks. And we're going to talk about the concept of interpretations today. So I'm going to bring Jen on and we're going to have this really meaty, juicy conversation. I'm excited for you to hear about it. So let me add her.
Hi, Shayna.
Hey, Jen, welcome.
Thank you. Great to see you.
Good to see you too from my car today on this
Hi.
beautiful day.
Hey, whatever works, right?
Whatever works, exactly. So I was just saying that we are talking about part 3 of our 4-part mini series on interpretations. So I'm going to actually turn it over to you to start to talk a little bit about what they are.
Yeah. So interpretations are really interesting things. We all do them. So what happens is when we're going through life and we hear something, we see something, we feel something, experience something, we have that experience and then we assign meaning to it. So the human mind is designed to make meaning. And what happens is we make a meaning, or you may have heard the idea of writing a story, or we have our story about something. And that's just how it occurs to us. And we go through life day to day, and things are just occurring to us, and off we go. And the way we interpret something, most of the time, seems to us like it is the truth. The reality is, in most cases, it is just our truth. It is not the truth, which is why people fight and argue about things so much. So when we start to understand that so many of our interpretations are not true, they're just our interpretations and they're disempowering, we can start to make some changes.
Yeah, thank you. And it's really interesting, right? Because when it's our truth, it's hard to even know that it's not the truth. And so I think it takes a lot of sort of, checking yourself and saying, wait a minute, where am I adding meaning here that might not necessarily be the truth, to your point, right? Where am I sort of trying to create a story out of the uncertainty I'm sitting in order for me to feel like I know what's going on? And I think to your point, what's unfortunate is I think we often lean and like sort of err on the side of it being maybe something that's not really serving us, something that's negative versus something positive. And so when it's something negative that we're creating in our minds, maybe it's like somebody gives you a look and you say, oh, well,
Mhm.
she doesn't like me. Well, my goodness, how are you then going to be acting versus like maybe she was just giving a look or she has RBF, right? Right. And so it's a silly example, but it's amazing how much we then create this whole story around it. And then we act in a way that's responding to something that isn't reality.
Right,
It's just what's in our heads.
right. And then we wonder why other people's responses to our reactions don't make any sense, or why they're like, what's your problem? And you're like, well, you, blah, 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 right? Um, the I forgot what I was going to say specifically about that. There are several things that can lead to the types of interpretations we have, and it can be very different with different people. That's our filters. Our filter is almost like a lens that we're looking through. So, for example, if you put on blue glasses, things are going to look blue.
Mhm.
And a white wall, might look blue to you, and you will argue all day long that that wall is blue. And all of a sudden, somebody takes off those glasses, and you go, oh my gosh, I could have sworn it really looked blue. I guess it's not. And that leads me to something I tell my clients all the time. I tell myself this as well. Everything to us is true until it's not,
Mm,
right? So, for in your example, the woman walks by, gives you a look, and you're like, oh my God, she hates me, or she's
mhm,
unfriendly, or I've heard she's not nice,
mhm.
right? And then so you walk through your day thinking that Susie Q is not nice. And then somebody comes and says, oh, did you hear? Susie's cat died this morning. Oh, I feel so bad. And you go, oh my gosh, no wonder she had that look on her face or gave me that look.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, your truth about her vanishes and a new truth emerges.
Absolutely. I love that. And I want to just say a quick hi, Eugenie, first watching. I
Oh,
see Eugenie's on here.
Eugenie's
I
here.
see, yep, and I see Garrett. Hi, Garrett. So thank you guys for being here with us.
Hey guys.
I wanted to give an example, Jen, to that. So I have a client right now who is preparing to become a senior level executive at her company. And part of that is she goes up in front of this board who basically sort of give her feedback on her presentation, which is basically her giving her value proposition as to why she should become an executive. And after she did it, she came to me and she said, I looked around the room and I saw people kind of heads down. They weren't even looking at me. And she said, I really think I didn't do very well. I was
Oh,
looking around and like their heads were down. They weren't smiling. They weren't engaging. They weren't even making eye contact with me. And I just feel like that's just not how they normally are. So she created all of this drama for herself around what was happening in the room. Come to find out a few weeks later, she made executive. She
uh-huh.
prepared beautifully well. And when we talked about what else maybe was happening in the room, she realized, wait, I was at the end of the day. They had been seeing like 50 presentations over a span of 3 or 4 days. They were probably tired. They were probably taking notes because they did give her feedback on what she did well and what she could have improved. It didn't impact the outcome at all. And she said, I feel so silly that I spent so much brain power
Mhm.
on it. And then I withdrew the rest of the week. She said, I canceled client calls because I was so distraught over what I thought was happening. So I think it's an
Yeah.
example of how we can let these interpretations, these stories, these filters, to your point, get in our way and create so much excess noise that isn't necessarily
Right.
real.
And in the moment that she was like in it, feeling bad after her interview, that was probably the truth for her.
Yes.
They did not like me. I'm just not going to get this job. And how many times have people had relationships go astray with either family members, siblings, longtime friends, right? Because something happens where they have a different perspective and they get into a fight or an argument. 10 years, 20 years, a lifetime could go by. And then the people, for some reason, get back together and they talk about it and they go, oh my God, I never realized you felt that way. Why didn't you come to me? I didn't know you were interpreting what I was saying like that I was hurting your feelings.
Yes.
Why didn't you talk to me? And people are like dumbfounded to find out that people are actually interpreting them in a way that's disempowering. And if only they had communicated, which
Yes.
leads us to say, like, what can people do to start questioning their interpretations anytime something feels bad or disempowering, to start saying like, how much do I actually know that what I'm seeing, what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking is the truth?
Mm-hmm.
So what are some things, Shayna, that people might do to help become aware of or resolve disempowering interpretations?
So one thing that I do personally, and I ask my clients often when I hear an interpretation when they're explaining something, is I will often ask, what meaning am I making of this? What meaning am I adding to this? Right? And when you can kind of say, this is how I'm seeing this, this is the meaning I'm making, you can ask yourself, how sure am I that that's the case?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that kind of a two-step process gets at the sort of, is it the truth, real truth, like the world is round truth, or is it the truth of like, well, this is kind of what I think is happening? And I do think there's something here about, right, gut and intuition. And that's a very real thing that I believe in, but you don't want to let it get in the way. In other words, let the meaning get in the way of what actually is also possible in that moment, what other perspective you could hold. And I think maybe if I were to give a third thing, it would be to ask yourself, what's another perspective I can hold on what could be happening here? What about you, Jen? What
Yeah.
would you say?
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think it's important for, especially for people who are intuitive and do get strong gut feelings, is to remember that in a moment that we're feeling disempowered, typically by definition is also a time most likely we cannot rely on our gut feelings and intuition because we're not connected to that when we're feeling disempowered. And it's very difficult to differentiate um, if we're feeling fear or angst or insecurity, to differentiate that from a gut feeling.
Mm,
So typically, I usually recommend people to reevaluate when they're feeling better, if it still is their gut feeling. And the only thing else that I would add to that is when you're questioning what a situation means to you, what are you making a situation mean? What are you making a person's words mean? Is to go a little one step deeper and to say, what am I making that mean about me?
mm,
Right? So for your example with your client in that interview, when she felt like, oh, they weren't looking at me, da 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 da. What did she make it mean about the situation? Meaning that they didn't think I was a good candidate, blah blah blah. And what am I making that mean about me? And it might be something like, I'm actually not good enough to be considered for the senior executive position, or
Mhm.
I'm not likable, or I'm not smart enough, or some version of that. Little prelude to what we're going to be talking about in our next episode, which are
Teaser. Teaser.
gremlins. Teaser, teaser. Which those are our gremlins. When we suddenly turn that about
Yeah.
us, those are gold mines for
Mhm.
personal growth when we can start to become aware of those.
Absolutely beautiful. And I also want to make sure I want to give credit because you and I are schooled in the same way of thinking around this, and that is from IPEC. And so IPEC
Yes,
has given us these amazing tools to use for us to be able to really hear what our clients are saying and what they're not saying. And so that's why we
yes,
think this 4-part mini series is just so powerful, so critical. And it's exactly why, to your point, we're going to come in probably next week with some information about gremlins and how those really get in our way as well. Any
yes.
final words, Jen,
I
before we say goodbye?
yes, I just wanted to add to that. So the four energy blocks we're talking about are a part of a larger framework, excuse me, called energy leadership. And IPEC is the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching. Shayna and I are both IPEC certified core energy coaches. So grateful for all of that knowledge and information, and happy to share it with everybody else.
Absolutely. And it is good stuff.
It
It is
is
good stuff.
powerful.
It's very powerful. Awesome. Well, so
Okay.
good to see you, Jen. Have a great rest of your weekend. Thank you for those of you who joined and gave us some love in the comments. We appreciate that too.
All right.
All right.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye, everybody. See you next
Bye.
time.